Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Kristen, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research, and we are empathy educators who are essentially obsessed with helping everybody get along a little bit better and understanding the world in a richer way. This series is part of that. It's called Welcome to My World, and I get the privilege of spending a little bit of time with somebody who is different than me, which is everybody, and they are gracious enough to tell me about their lives so we can all understand a little bit better. And today is no exception. I am joined by Emma Minnick, who is a student athlete at Charleston Southern University, where Dr. Hinson and I have the incredible privilege of working with the College of Business. You may have heard of us talk about that on this channel. And I am very biased in that I love the students of Charleston Southern. So I'm very, very glad that Emma was able to join us today. Emma, thank you so much.
Yes, of course.
So would you mind opening up and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a sophomore at Charleston Southern. So it's my second year here. I play volleyball. And I grew up in Radford, Virginia, like 20 minutes away from Blacksburg, Virginia, where Virginia Tech is. So I've been playing volleyball since, honestly, as long as I can remember, pretty much, or just sports in general. And it's came with its hardships, but it's very rewarding. And I really loved my time at CSU. So I'm a marketing major and plan to do sports management with professional athletes in the future. So yeah, that's what I'm up to right now.
I know that balancing anything and school is a lot, and every student these days is forced to do that, whether it's athletics or job or both or whatever. But so has volleyball been kind of what you were focusing on for a scholarship to, like, this is, I want to be a college athlete? Was that always the goal?
So I played basketball and soccer too, in like growing up and then through high school. But volleyball was always the one that like was kind of set apart from everything else. And I was like, this is what I want to pursue in the future. And obviously college is so expensive these days. So most people do try to pursue a scholarship. So that's kind of what I had my eyes set on pretty much from the beginning. I was like, I really want to play college volleyball. And so when I got more serious into high school, I was like, okay, I think this is an attainable thing for me and I'm going to try to do this. And obviously it saved you so much money, but I also could not really imagine stopping playing volleyball. And I thought it would like give me a lot of opportunities in sports in the future, like a career path. So that's kind of what took me here.
Well, that makes sense, especially if you want to do sports management, which,
yeah,
if you're doing marketing, does that mean you want to work for like a firm and be like sports in that? Okay. And so being an athlete yourself is obviously going to be a little bit important to kind of understand. So one of the things that I know just from being in relationships with student athletes, I was not one myself, but that there are a lot of small sacrifices to the college experience that athletes have to make. And you're nodding. Like, can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah. So none of my friends from like home, from high school and stuff, like really went and played college sports. So they obviously have so much more free time and like more time for their studies and to meet people and hang out. And that's definitely something we have to sacrifice as athletes. And it's been super challenging this last year because, you know, your sport is kind of like your sanctuary. So like when you're going to like practice and all this stuff, like for some people it's like a nuisance, but for me that's kind of like my downtime, like away from school and like stressful things in life. It's like volleyball has that been an escape for me. But then this last year with COVID, it's like you can't really see anyone outside of, you know, like your team and like your professors and some other students, but not really anyone. So I think a lot of a struggle for athletes this last year has been like what once was like their downtime and free space is now like a priority where they only get to see the same people, you know, like I think it's kind of switched the meaning and like that importance for me. And you know, it's hard because like you want your sport to be something that like you can escape to and keep learning things and keep growing. But when you're forced to go there every day and see the same people and you're restricted to that because of a global pandemic, it's super hard, you know, because you already don't get the free time as an athlete. And then when this hit, it was like you really don't get any time outside your sport. So that's definitely been a challenge for me and my teammates.
I can imagine. And what has, like, can you talk me through some of the mechanics of this? Like, I would imagine this has affected eligibility for some people. And you couldn't play games last year, I'm going to assume. Were you able to, like, what does this look like in these times?
Yeah, so it's gotten a little bit better now. We just finished our COVID season, so it's like a shortened season, just conference games, and whoever won the most conference games goes to the NCAA tournament
Okay.
instead of having like a conference tournament. So we just finished ours and came in third or fourth in our conference. That was good. But there were a lot of regulations. At first, we didn't know. Obviously, we're a fall sport, so we were supposed to do that last fall and couldn't do that. Had to wear masks during practice. And now with season, it's been even more strict because we have to get tested before we leave for games. And that's usually once a week, and we play with masks on.
Okay.
And yeah, so if anybody gets COVID, like at the beginning of our season, another team in our conference had COVID at their school, so we had to kind of press pause on our week with them. So it's just kind of iffy, and like you can't really risk it because there's such a limited space to play volleyball this season, and it's so important not to get COVID in the middle of it.
Obviously, are all the indoor sports being forced to wear masks? Like, does basketball have to wear masks?
So it depends on phase. I know our school is doing like phases.
Okay.
So basketball doesn't get, they don't have to wear masks, but they have to get tested more.
Okay.
We only have to get tested the once a week or once every other week, but we have to wear masks all the time. So it just kind of depends on what they decide, like how high up, I guess, you are on the exposure list. So
Yeah, and I'd imagine like the physical, you guys don't get in each other's physical space as much
yeah.
in volleyball as you would in basketball. That makes sense. Yeah.
And during matches and stuff, we would have people in the end lines giving us balls. We couldn't like go if the ball went in the stands, you couldn't go get it. Like not really any like cooperation with other team. You had to wave, you couldn't high five or anything. So it was just super weird. It's hard to adjust to because you've played like one way your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, my mind is racing at how that must feel especially for sports such as yours, which is not like necessarily one of the really big famous ones. Like the feeling of camaraderie in the gym has to be such a really special thing, and this just blew it up.
Yeah, I mean it was easier to adjust to for me because like my teammates and I are super close, so we were like,
okay,
we got to get through it. We're going to get through it, and luckily nobody in our team got COVID. A couple of my teammates got COVID in the fall, but not this season.
Okay, good.
So it was actually kind of smooth sailing, and there was a lot of support system at school with the trainers and the weight room staff and stuff like that. So everyone was kind of cohesively working through it. But it definitely is so weird. Like I don't even remember, like the last season I played normal was in 2019 and it's 2021 now. So that's like, I don't know, super odd to get used to for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And in the middle of all of this, you're still trying to go to college.
Yeah.
And y'all did a bit of a hybrid where you were on campus and off campus, depending, which is it's different than some other universities.
Yeah.
So obviously you had to be on campus anyway. So a lot of your classes were on campus, or were you still in a bunch of virtual classes? What did that look like?
It's kind of switched season to season.
Okay.
So like last spring when everything hit, we all got sent home. And then the fall, we were kind of encouraged to keep doing virtual classes if we could, just to like minimize the exposure to other people. And then this spring, we were encouraged to be in class as much as possible because I think just in general, sports and athletes, we're so busy already, but everyone's grades kind of started to drop. I think like across the country, like everyone's doing online courses, but also required to go to practice.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to keep your academics alive when it's just a weird space to be in. But so we were encouraged a little bit more this semester to go in class, but obviously like this university in itself is still kind of splitting it into online and in class as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are a small campus, both physically and in terms of student population. So there was some constraints there.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So thinking to the future, which you obviously do all the time. I know a lot of student athletes are always future thinking because you guys have to be. But as you think about going into the field, in a couple of years, what kind of skills do you think you bring to the table as a student athlete that just a student wouldn't bring?
That's a good question. I think being an athlete, you are forced kind of to persevere through hardship and be a really good team player, like no matter what the table brings, like you just kind of have to work through with each other. So I think for me, I love working people, and that's why I picked marketing, just because I love figuring out things with my teammates and moving forward, coming up with new ideas. So I think that is a really good career path for me. And I've always considered myself a pretty good leader. So like I kind of like to take the reins on a lot of things. But Yeah, so I think being a manager for other athletes where I can actually, understand. I'm maybe not a professional athlete, but I know what like how grueling that can be and the amount of time given and a lot of certain things is. And I think it'll just be nice because I can relate and I know what they're going through.
Yeah, of course. And obviously your time is so structured. So
Yeah.
when there is time to, I don't know, take care of yourself, like taking care of yourself for athletes, I would imagine is different than it is for me because you guys are making your living on your bodies in a way that is different. But so like, is running or working out still a stress relief, or is it just more stressful now with COVID? Like, what else can you do to kind of unwind?
Um, you know, it's hard because sometimes it is still that like freedom
Good.
space, but then sometimes you get like sometimes, especially at the beginning of season, everyone's so excited to be back out and you're ready to get going, especially after we haven't played in a year. But then once you get into that pattern of like practice, 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 academics, and you're also focusing on your performance levels on both sides,
Yeah.
while also trying to maintain like your social life and your friendships and relationships with people, it can be like super intense. And I know for me and my teammates, we always like a lot of us are super plan ahead thinkers and
Okay.
like want to know what the schedule is and all this stuff. But when you're getting these changes thrown at you, it's like it almost takes some fun out of it because it's you just have to be there and you don't have an escape anywhere else. That's your priority and you're expected to maintain these high performance levels in other areas of your life as well. So it can be for me, I like struggled a little bit more this year just because it felt so repetitive. And I think that's how a lot of people felt too, but I
Yeah, like
still
we
love
all felt like we were living Groundhog Day. Like it was like, okay, I'm going to get up again and do the same things again. And there's
exactly.
no variety. It didn't feel like we had choice anymore. It just
Exactly.
felt like we had obligations.
Yeah. And when you're obligated to play that sport that's been like your whole life and it's gotten to where you are in college and it's giving you all these opportunities, but then like you're forced to just do all these things. And I think a lot of like superiors like on campuses probably didn't realize so much the impact it was going to have on people's mental health and like the
I don't think any of
appreciation.
us were quite prepared for it. No. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it just makes such a big impact. And when you're a young person and you're a young athlete, like I'm only a sophomore, so it's kind of weird for me to get this thrown at me like my second year in college. I'm like, this is not what I expected.
Yeah. No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think coaches and trainers at CSU have been pretty good about asking us like, hey, how do you feel? Like, what's going on? Like, how are you taking this? So that's been super helpful. But at first, I think everyone was a little overwhelmed with the impact it was having on like your peers.
Yeah. I know in the marketing classes that Dr. Aaron and I are working with Prof. Hyatt, there's been a lot of conversation about like mental well-being. Like how can you measure, okay, so I'm in bed a whole lot more now. Is it out of boredom? Is it out of depression? Is it just COVID depression? Or have I actually slipped into something more clinical? Like what does this all look like? And I think we're all still figuring it out. Mm-hmm. But I'm really glad to hear that those conversations are happening in the weight rooms and in the training rooms as well. Yeah. So volleyball hasn't been 100% great this year because of COVID. So have you picked up a COVID hobby like the way the rest of us have, or are you making sourdough? Like have you found something else to kind of fill that?
I was just talking about this the other day. I was like, I need to pick up a hobby because when these things hit, I don't have anything else to do. I like my roommate is like a crazy artist. She's like super good at all that stuff. So she automatically just goes to her room and starts painting. But I'm like, oh gosh, what do? I played sports my whole life. I don't have anything else to do. Yeah. So I started when I was home. I started cooking and baking with my mom some and like just trying to do something, and would go work out with my friends and outside and stuff. But unfortunately, I'm not really good at other things. Haven't found my hobby yet.
You're paid to be really good at those two things at school and volleyball, and then the world just went, nope, sorry, Emma, we've got some other stuff going on.
Yeah, and it's hard too because that's like your whole identity, like athletes are like their whole identity has been in sport, so it's just weird.
That's interesting. Have you and your peers been forced to kind of ask that identity question? Because most of you aren't going to play sports professionally, and so part of your identity has to shift, and you all know that. I know that working with student athletes, you guys get that. But has this made it shift a little bit sooner? Have you had to wrestle with that?
Yeah, it's been really eye-opening because I can't ever imagine like leaving this sports in general, but especially volleyball. So I
Right.
think when we actually got cut off, most of us have been playing this sport for as long as you can remember, or I've been like consistently going to a practice for a sport every week. And like the most time you have off is maybe a month or two in the middle of the year.
Oh my
But
God,
other
and now
than
you
that,
have 18 months off. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, what do I do now? Because I've grown up with this. Like, I can't even remember a week in my life where I've never been going to a practice. So when I was like, you're cut off from everything, I was like, what am I supposed to do? And I think it really put in perspective what it's going to be like to graduate in a couple of years. Like, hopefully, I'll be going to grad school or I'll have a job to go to. But just thinking about, wow, this could actually end at some point. This is what it feels like to not have this sport around in your life.
Yeah, and I can imagine, I wasn't an athlete, but I did a lot of volunteer stuff. And when I left, I went to college 12 hours from home. And so when I left there, it was like my whole existence kind of like crumbled. I didn't have anything, and I didn't know what to do. And in a way, like as the old person here, I'm glad you had a taste of it so you can prepare a little bit better than I did, because I really struggled with having an idea of who I was outside of college.
Yeah. And it makes you appreciate it more too, because like you appreciate your friendships more, you appreciate seeing your family more and your grandparents and playing your sport and seeing your coaches. So I think that definitely has been one of the only benefits of this pandemic is making people realize like and appreciate the time that they get with people.
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. And I can tell everyone feels a little bit guilty being like silver lining.
Yeah.
But with any trauma, we're all going to learn lessons from trauma. And I
Yeah.
think if we've learned that humans are not dispensable,
Exactly.
if we've been reminded of that, I think that's a good lesson to learn from this.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, since you are one of the busiest women I've spoken to. But in parting words, is there anything else for those of us who were not student athletes, when we think about your lives, what would you like us to know?
I would just say appreciate other people's like time and efforts, because those people that you don't like, for me, I don't even think about it as like other athletes, but I see people and I'm like, I don't know what's going on in their life. So I'm going to appreciate that they are doing their best right now. And they probably have a lot more going on than, you see on the backside of things. So I would just say to like, be really open to people and try to learn from people. I mean, like I'm still learning from so many people that aren't involved with athletics, but are doing other things. And that makes me like, oh, maybe I should take something else up. Maybe like that's super interesting. And it makes me want to learn from people. So I would say just, yeah, be observant and be nice to people and kind and understanding.
I love it. Those are some of our mottos here at Abbey Research. So I love that accidental synergy, and I totally agree. So Emma, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a delight.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody else, we'll see you next time on Welcome to My World.